All right. So, I mean, let's just begin with telling us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Asurca Rodriguez. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. Um, right now, I'm currently unemployed, but the pandemic makes it so difficult for anyone to keep a job nowadays. But
Yeah.
I have with my bachelor's degree in psychology, I actually want to pursue neuroscience, specifically psychopharmacology. And currently, right now, I really don't do too much. I just offer support to my friends and like people on Clubhouse if they have like problems that they're going through. I definitely talk them through them.
That's very generous of you. That's how we met, by the way, just through
Yeah.
Clubhouse. And I love the way that you spoke. You're very like soft spoken, very inspirational. Um what are some things that you like people come to you for advice for? Because you said you offer some advice to your friends and people. What do you often like hear about?
I think the one thing that I hear about the most is just people being stressed out about their life, whether it be like their job, they hate their job, or they hate their not hate their relationship, but they just don't think it's like working the way it should be. And so I always tell people like, hey, it's your life, you can live it however you want, and I always encourage people to take the steps that they need to take in order to do what they need to do to have a better life. And so that's probably the most prominent thing I hear from people is, I'm stressed, I'm tired, or I want to change this about my life and I don't know how. And I'm like, just go do it.
Just do it. I mean, that's sometimes people need that person like yourself that give them that extra push, right? Like just to
Yeah.
hear it from someone else, right?
Yeah.
So tell us something interesting about yourself that most people don't know.
mm, I would say one thing about me that people probably don't know. Oh, I didn't prepare for this at all. I
Oh,
just
play that's
decided I'd come and chit chat and hope for the
it's
best.
it's even better, right? On the spot. It's
Right.
genuine
Uh,
conversation.
but I guess, oh, you know what? One thing about me that most people don't know is I failed an entire year of college, entire semester. Zeros. I got an F in 5 classes. Not even an incomplete, just a failure in 5 classes. But I ended up graduating, um, and my GPA never went below a 2.5.
There you go. Was that just if you don't mind me, just because you were in a bad space or
It was actually because I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until college. So if you look at my GPA, like up until I
oh
got
wow.
diagnosed, it was on a obvious downward spiral of, I think it started at a 2 something, and then I was at a 1 something, and then the next semester was like 0. So yeah.
That's interesting. Actually, I'm pretty interested to hear about that. Tell us a bit more about like when do people find out? Do you know when people find out that they have ADHD?
Yeah, so normally, so this is the interesting part. I went to college, and my roommate was a white woman, and it was a very different just way of going about things. That she had things, she just went about things very differently. And so when I was telling her about my problems about school and whatnot, she immediately was like, go get tested for a learning disorder. And she was saying that this stuff is usually diagnosed as a child. So it's usually found out in childhood and whatnot.
Mm.
And so it wasn't diagnosed in me at all until I went to college. And when went to go take the test, I was like, oh, I don't have ADHD. And I did well on that test. And the lady was like, yeah, you did so well. You have ADHD. Like,
You like 100%. You got
yeah,
100%. Like
yeah,
you
you
oh
got a
my
hundred
gosh.
percent on this. But yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think I feel that's a common theme for minorities in general where we're kind of late to finding out whether it's like mental health or just any health issues in general. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think it just has something. I'd actually spoken to a friend about this because I was like, does it take so long for minorities and to get diagnosed with either diseases or mental illnesses and whatever it may be. And if you really think about it, what I realize is a lot of like Latinos and Black people, what we do is we just persevere. We just get through it. And we don't see these problems as something that can be solved, nor do we see them as problems that can, if we solve them, can make our life better. So we see them as like, okay, well, I'm not crying every day, but that has nothing to do with me like working or whatever. Or if I'm like really stressed out, like how is me going to therapy going to make more money? Like I'm paying to feel better. Like I can just go drink and then I'll feel better. I can just go
Right.
smoke and I'll feel better. And so a lot of times we don't see the benefits of those resources because we're not educated on them. And so,
Yeah, absolutely. And as well as like the costs associated with it and insurance, right? Like
yeah,
a lot of our community lacks insurance and therapy can be expensive if you know.
yeah. Per
I
session, at
mean,
least like
you know.
per session, it's like sometimes it can range between like $20 to $100, per session. And depending, the thing is, it's been proven that therapy does work. Cognitive behavioral therapy does work when you try to change your thoughts. And those treatments take at least about a year or two just to work. And
Wow.
so you're thinking about $20 a session. If you really want, if you really need it really, badly, you might want to go once a week or twice a week. That's $20 a week. $40 a week or so for about 2 years. That's a lot of money that you
Yeah.
just wasted on chit chatting with someone when you could have just not done that.
I guess that's the other thing too is that like I look at a generation like my parents and they're thinking like why would I pay someone to just talk like when I can
Yeah,
just use that money to buy like groceries and I mean people living like paycheck to paycheck they don't have that
yeah,
kind of luxury because I think it's really a luxury to be able to do that.
it
Um
is. It's a real privilege to get care.
yeah, and I was gonna ask you, do you know of like or have you done any research or work on like how to change that mindset that like more people in our community should seek therapy? I mean, especially people in our community, I think would be the ones that need it even more, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think the way that I've really just been trying to phrase it to people is that um, because I feel like we've been taught that the world is just so static and that our, emotions really have no meaning other than just sometimes I'm angry, sometimes I'm not. But when you I try to break it down to people and say that stress, if you become more stressful or more stressed out, it can create chemicals in your brain and can make you do this and can make you do that. And I'll use their own examples and be like, hey, you remember when you did, this, and that, and you got really mad? That was because you were stressed out and you didn't deal with that problem accordingly. And it's more of like it's something that we can't just make a public service announcement and people are going to get it. It's more of a case by case situation. And so I just try to be very understanding and also like try to tell people to be a little bit more open minded that if you haven't tried this, then maybe it will work. Just try it and maybe it will make you feel better. And then from that decision on feeling better, now you can go and, do something else and you're not worried about whatever you were worried about before.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's just introducing it to them and just being like, well, if you don't like it, it's not something that you have to keep doing, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
then,
And I think, oh, go
yeah, go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and one thing I tell people, especially if they're looking for a therapist, is like therapy is like dating, because the person you find, you may not like them a lot, and they may not be for you. Like the way I deal with my problems are very different than other people. Like I tend to cry things out and take an entire day to myself to just be sad. And other people are like, well, I don't need all of that. I just need to talk about it and I'll move on with my day. And so it just depends on there's different types of therapy styles, and instead of trying to confuse people with the words and stuff, I just be like, if you don't match with them, just fire them and find another one. Like just keep going.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up that it's you don't have to stick with it with the first person that you go to as well, right? I mean, like minorities have different mental health needs
Yep.
than than like a white person would. I mean, what do you what would you share like some of those different like mental health needs would be for us?
I would say I think the most prominent thing is family.
Yeah.
Because so my family situation is a little bit different. But being Mexican and black, like part of the Mexican side is my mom, and the way that just the Mexican lifestyle is that you take care of your family regardless. Like it doesn't matter how old you are. You be 40 years old and your mother needs something, you go do it. And I think that's one thing a lot of therapists don't understand is that cultural differences, and how people are very close with their families. Um, and just understanding that, um, at no point are we going to not we're not going to not help our families, but at the same time have a healthy balance between helping our families and then also making sure that we're successful in our lives.
Absolutely. Well said. And healthy balance. I'm curious how we balance our helping our family and letting it kind of consume us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like doing so much that we're not doing enough for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, that's one thing is, and it's really hard to talk to someone outside of it about it, because I remember I spoke to a therapist about my mother's issues and she's just so dependent on me. But my therapist came to the conclusion that, just because my mom was very negligent as a mother when I was younger, that instead of me doing anything for my mother, that I should be like asking her for money and that my mother owes me all this, and that. And I'm like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but like I need to move past that. And so with that healthy balance, it's more of like understanding. I think as our generation, millennials and Gen Z, it's a little bit of unfortunately, our burden to understand that our parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles aren't really going to understand the type of independency that we want. And so I think
Yeah.
it'd be easier for us to make our own boundaries, communicate it to them, and then just enforce it. And we already know they're going to get mad. They're going to huff and puff and cry and call you the worst person. But guess who's they're going to call tomorrow? You. Like,
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, your
so
family, right?
yeah. So it's like, toughen up a little bit. They're going to yell at you. They're going to be mad, but it's okay. Like, that you're doing this for their best interest and your best interest. So
No, that's absolutely right. And it's like you can't help them if you first don't help yourself, right? Like you have to be
yeah,
in a good state or you're not even going to be able to help if you can't help yourself, how are you going to help someone else, right? Like
right.
I live
Exactly.
by that. Um so I was going to say I did some research and I found some studies that have documented how physicians were less likely to identify the severity of depression among minority patients versus white patients, which is kind of like similar to what we talked about.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like that's like a real issue. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's just again it's just not going to the right physician or just not looking around for the physician or not being enough physicians?
Yeah, no, I think it's so interesting you bring that up because in order to be diagnosed, so when you go into to therapy or any, behavioral like center or whatever, mental health center, they're going to give you a questionnaire. And that questionnaire is going to ask you, are you depressed? Are you sad? Have you felt like killing yourself? And most people are going to say no. Like, no, I haven't been depressed because no one's diagnosed me as depressed.
Right.
I've been a little bit sad, but that one answer is not enough to trigger depression. And if you haven't thought about suicide, or killing yourself, or that you're be better off like not in this world, if you haven't had those thoughts, and I would say that people may have had them, but they're not being communicated the same way. And so it's more of like the way that we're explaining these things, because people could be depressed and severely depressed, but the way that they're going about it is that they're going to work every day.
Mm,
They're they don't have any time to themselves, so they don't have time to think about those thoughts. And so I think
right.
that's something that it's like, I think we need to deep dive into it a little bit more. And just a little bit of information about my background. I don't have a strong family tie, but it's mostly my mother. And so every time I get those questionnaires, I answer them legitimately, like, yeah, my family life is this, my family life is that. And they're like, well, are you really sad about it? And I'm like, yeah, sometimes. But, and they're like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. Like, as long as you're okay with it. And I'm like thinking back, it's like, was I okay with it? Like,
Wait, really? So they just so you're like, I'm sad, and they're like, are you okay with it? And it's just like, I guess, and they're like, all right, you're
yep,
fine. That's really
literally.
how it went.
That was those how the questions. They were like, well, you answered this, and I was like, well, I mean, I'm okay about it. Like, I don't really think about it too much, and this and that. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we can just move on. And they were more focused like on my ADHD instead of like the depression, because they're like, oh, well, you should be fine. And I'm like, mm, okay.
That baffles me, actually. I didn't know that. I mean, it really comes down to like a questionnaire.
Yeah,
Um, that's that's insane.
that's like
That's
that's the
saddening.
usual. That's usually how they. That's the first thing that they do. So if you don't trigger any red flags on that questionnaire, they're not going to ask you about depression at all.
Wow. Hmm. That's interesting because you say that there's, I mean, the large majority, like a large percentage, right, and checks off that they aren't. And I feel like even if I was, I'd I'd still check off like no, right? Because like you said, you kind of, if you don't have time to think about it, you might
Mm-hmm.
not even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. So how do you go about that? Do you think that that needs to be like changed, or how do you find, how do you diagnose that?
Yeah, no, I think one, it definitely needs to be changed. But I think the way to really go about it is to, whatever is on the questionnaire, whatever, who cares? I
Mhm.
think we've all understood that standardized tests are not good ways of judging people at all.
Absolutely.
Um, and so with that, I think I'm really not sure what to do on the medical side, because there's a lot of opinions about who should do what and how intake should happen and things like that. And so I think the only way I can really give advice is for maybe on the personal side of the person, is to say, like, if you feel a certain way, do not allow someone to tell you that it's not, that you
Mm,
don't feel that way. Because you may not know what the word depression means, or you may not know what the word major depression is, or what manic means. But if you have feelings of just severe sadness, and you don't, you really don't, things aren't as joyful as you thought they were, or sometimes you feel like you're out of control with, your, how much fun you have, and you just, it's so out of control. Like, those are things that you need to like just express to them and say, hey, I don't know how to like do this questionnaire, but this is what I'm here for. These are the reasons that I'm
mm.
here. So
So communication's key.
yeah.
So that's interesting. So you're saying like having so much fun that you're kind of just doing it to go through the motions.
Yeah, like I know a lot of people.
That's interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah, because I have a few friends. I had a few friends that were depressed, and I had friends that would see that and they'd be like, "Well, if they say they're depressed, but they're always partying all the time, and they're always doing this, and they're always doing that," and it's like, um, yeah, I think they're just doing stuff to do it, just like to feel something a lot of times.
Right, right.
And when you realize that your friends or people around you are just doing crazy stuff just to get a feeling out of you, and you're like, oh, okay, like at what point are you going to seek out a little bit help and realize that it's not you, you just need some guidance.
So how do you, as a friend that sees this, right? How do you approach that person? Um, and talk about it, right? And I feel like that's not something easy to do.
No, it's really not, because most of the time people are going to be defensive, because when we have like pure emotions, whether it be anger, happiness, sadness, or like, you know, sexual like pleasure or whatnot, we're ashamed of them.
Mm.
We're not going to sit here and like somebody. I think happiness maybe is the only thing that we're okay with sharing with people, but everything else is like we're not going to share it. And so
Well,
I
that's
usually
huge.
go
Yeah.
I usually go into a conversation realizing that, okay, they're probably not going to tell me what's actually happening. But if I give just hints of like, yeah, if you need this or if you need that, I can, come and help you. Or with my best friend, she's actually, her father passed away last year. And instead of like being blunt and say, hey, your dad passed away, it's Father's Day weekend, we should hang out. Like,
Right, right.
it's not something she would respond to at all. She'd be like, girl, no. So instead, I'd be like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, let's hang out and like just really be there for them. And I wouldn't say chaperone or monitor them, but just really be there and support them and say, hey, if you ever feel, this way, I'm always here for you. Like, say it before they ask, before you want them to ask. Um,
I
and
like
just
that.
so,
I like that. I
yeah.
think a lot of people um that wait for like like a sign or for them to say something for you
Hmm.
to kind of reassure them, right?
Hmm.
But I feel like, I mean, I feel like I wouldn't say anything, you know. I'd be like the type of person that I am. It's like I don't want to burden other people with
Nobody does.
with my problems. So it's like probably wouldn't say anything, only to like my girlfriend, like my closest person, right? That's
Hmm.
but even with like your significant other, some people have trouble communicating that. So I like that you say that you should assure them and just make sure that you're there for them, right?
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that you can do as a friend, because it's going to be really presumptuous of you to say, hey, you're showing signs of depression.
Hmm.
Because nobody wants to feel like a textbook. Nobody wants to feel like, oh, like you're just doing this because you have a psych degree and you're just trying to be a know-it-all and whatnot.
Do
And
you get
so
that a lot? Are people
I've,
like, oh, you're just trying to use like, yeah, you just think you know it all,
yeah.
because of your degree or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like,
You
oh,
get
you
that a
just
lot.
think. And it's like, okay, I need to change my approach. I understand why you feel that way. You feel attacked. You feel like I'm over here, like discussing you in my class, and I'm not. So I decided I'd change my approach and just be a little bit more approachable so that they can approach me instead of me trying to, open them up.
That is huge of you. I gotta commend you for that and applaud you, because most people would just be like, I feel like most people would just be like, all right, well, bye. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
screw you. But like, I feel like a real friend like yourself, like, would change their approach. And that's something we can all learn from. It's just changing our approach.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one thing and I it's a really fine line. Because it's a really fine line that I walk, because back in 2018 I got a traumatic brain injury.
Hmm.
And I understand that the injury came from someone else, but I also don't want to sit here and like, oh my gosh, like there's nothing I can do. And so I decided, like I said, change my approach. Like maybe I need to take a little bit more responsibility and be like, okay, this is an issue that I have. And instead of, expecting things to work the same way that they used to work, I need to change that and change my approach to the problem and realize that, you know what, I'm not the problem, but the things that I'm trying to do, like work a regular job, is the problem. And so I
Mm.
think that's one thing that I've since I had that one issue with that friend who thought I was being a know-it-all with my psych degree. From then I'm like, okay, I need to change my approach to most problems when I encounter an issue.
Right. And you gave us a little bit of a snippet there, but I'm interested to see how, if you're okay with it, talk about your injury and how that shaped um how you go about things and how you think about mental health and everything as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of like really changed it a lot, because it just has been eye-opening, because a lot of the things that we consider like legitimate, like doctors and stuff, I realize is, I'm not saying they're not legitimate, but I'm also saying that there's a lot more solutions to our problems than what's being presented to us. And with my concussion, the traumatic brain injury that I had, I have this, the problem I had is like damn near impossible to figure out, right? I can't see too well. I can't see screens. I can't stand in light. I get dizzy. I get nauseous. I have a headache every day. I get confused. I have memory problems. And so I'm like, how am I supposed to work a regular job? And I think one of the questions that really like got to me was, how, what is the purpose of living if I don't remember my life?
Mm,
And that was probably the deepest shit. I was like, I really need
that
to
is
figure
deep.
that out, because I forget stuff all the time, and it feels like I do stuff. I'm like, why am I doing it? What is my purpose of doing it
Hmm.
if I don't remember it? And I started to realize that mental health is probably one of the most important things in our body that we can actually do, because without our brain, there's nothing our body can physically do. Like, you take the brain away, you're purposeless.
Yep.
And so um I was like, how do I like fix, how do I solve, how do I navigate the world, a digital world at that,
Mm.
in a pandemic? Everything's digital. I wanted to go to college, like go
So
back
was
to
this
school.
during, sorry to cut you off, was this during your, was it before the pandemic or like,
Yeah, this happened in 2018.
oh
And
wow,
so
okay.
I've been like suffering with the issues since 2018. And then when the pandemic hit, I was
Mm,
about to get a new job. And that was like, yeah, no, no jobs. Because I was going to be an office manager for a law office. And I was just going to be doing paperwork stuff. Didn't really need to use a computer too much, and just walk around their office and file stuff away. It was going to be a really easy job. And I was like, yeah, I can do this. And then the pandemic hit and everything became digital. And
mm,
so I was like, damn, like, how am I really supposed to get through this? And so the way that it really changed, like, my ideas towards mental health is that mental health isn't as I think I'm using this word static, like it stays the same. It's not as static as we think it is. Like, we think that depression is just depression, and then that's all you go through,
mm.
and there's nothing else. And it's no, it's a messy mix of a whole bunch of other stuff that happens. And it's more of like, you have to really look inward in order for you to understand what's going on outside of, around you in the world. Like, think of, sorry, I had to think about what I wanted in life to the core, not just, well, I need a job, I needed a place to stay. Like, no, to
Right.
the core. What did I want to do to the core, and how can I do that regardless of any injuries? And I think at that point I realized that just perseverance never stops. And I think a lot of people take that a little bit too literally in some situations. Like I said, it's not as static as we think it is. It's not, yeah, we're just going to keep working hard on trying to be a better person, or trying to do this and that. But it's like, no, you are going to keep working hard, but at the same time, do you have to work hard? Because we don't,
Mm.
like, this analogy sounds weird, but like, we don't make suits to get into lava because there's nothing there. Like, there is all that effort and energy that we would put into a suit to get into lava is purposeless. And so when I think of mental health, people are going through all these problems that are unnecessary. So they believe, I need to persevere through these problems, but not something else.
How do
And
you
so, go ahead.
sorry, I was saying, how do you identify that? Like, how do you, as, how do you balance, like, I need to, like, put like 24 hours of my time into something, or I need to work so hard that I'm gonna work myself to the ground, like how do you say maybe I shouldn't do that? Like how do you identify that, right?
I think it really starts when you realize that you're not happy. And unfortunately for some people, they're never going to realize that. They're going to be like, yeah, no, I'm fine. And this is cool. This is great. But for some people, they'll realize like, no, this is not how I want to be. This is
Mm,
not, something needs to change. And so once you realize something needs to change, that's when you really need to look inward and go down to your core beliefs of, okay, if you believe hard work is important, why are you working hard for an employer that doesn't care about you? Like, if
right.
you really believe you're a hard worker, why do you come home stressed out because your boss said you weren't? You're believing what they're saying. And
Mm,
when you realize those things, you're like, wait, I've allowed these people around me to tell me who I am, how I should live my life. I'm over here trying to work hard, not realizing that your purpose right now is to impress your boss. Your purpose is to impress your parents. And your purpose is to impress these other people. When you realize that you don't want to impress anyone anymore, you're like, hey, I just want to be happy on my own. I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not, being a bad person. I just want to live my life the way that I want to. And I think that's why a lot of people have become entrepreneurs, that they're
mm,
realizing I don't have to play into this anymore. I don't have to get a job just to have a place to stay. People are getting tiny homes. People are paying $20,000 for a tiny home and taking that everywhere and saying, I'm not
yeah.
paying rent. So I think a lot of people are realizing this, but I think it really starts with when you realize that you are not happy.
Mm.
And the reason that you're not happy is because you're trying to please everyone else, regardless of if you're a quote unquote people pleaser.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that. I'm a people pleaser just because I love it interacting with people though. But you know what? When I was in high school, um, I feel like I let a lot of people walk over me, and then
Mhm.
I kind of got to a point where I also I think having like a period of reflection is very good because
Mhm.
there was a point where I was just like, why am I letting these people like, and it was, I think it was a lot of insecurities of being like undocumented, that I
Mhm.
wasn't as like, uh, that, I didn't have the same rights. So I was always careful. I always had that voice in my head, like, well, you better watch out because you never know. Like one of these kids could just, they'll get like away scotch free, but like you, on the other hand, could actually get deported. Like that's a
Right.
realization that we
Yeah.
have. Um, what do you recommend for someone to who's dealing with that kind of issue, because for me it was hard to come out of where I was in a right mental state to finally be like, you know what, no, I am like worthy enough, and I shouldn't let people like walk all over me.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the what I would tell people that are in that space and they're trying to get out of it is to just really trust your intuition. That little voice in your head, that gut feeling, that you're like, like I know this is right, but the world is telling me, something else. Like this calculator says 2 plus 2 is 5, but I know in my heart it's 4. And I think that's the one thing a lot of people are scared of, is just to listen to that intuition, listen to that voice in your head, and follow that before you follow anyone else. Because I personally believe that every time anyone makes a decision, they know in their head if it's a good or bad decision. Like they just know, and they don't listen to that. They're like, oh yeah, it's not a good decision, but you know.
Yeah, no,
So
absolutely.
just listen to your intuition and let that guide you. And follow not your heart, your intuition, because your heart will lead to heartbreak.
I like that. So to kind of shift gears a little bit, but still within the same realm, how do you think like racism plays into mental health? Because I feel a lot of people that aren't minorities at least wouldn't think it does, but
Mhm.
I think it absolutely does, and we know it's a civil rights issue. But do you think it's also like a public health concern?
No, I think it's definitely obvious. Like, just it more background information about me. I'm from
Mhm.
Chicago. I'm from the south side of Chicago, back of the yards neighborhood. And the in not the entire south side, but a lot of the south side of Chicago is riddled with gangs. And it's so interesting to me because I kind of just made this connection the other day. I was like, well, okay, if we know that there's so many gangs in Chicago and people are dying left and right, what do we think that's doing to the kids? Like, are they
Yeah.
not traumatized? Like, and so to me, it's like, okay, now we have these traumatized kids. They don't know they're traumatized because they haven't been diagnosed. They just know that
Right.
they get angry when people do A, B, and C, and they can't control their emotions. They have PTSD. And so, they act upon that. And instead of trying to get any type of mental health services to the south side, everybody immediately goes to judging them and saying, oh, these kids are doing this, these kids are doing that.
Hmm.
And I'm like thinking, like, damn, like, you all have literally belittled these children into to being nothing, and saying that these kids, they're hopeless because they've been traumatized. Because it's the same thing that we do to people that go to war. They go to war, they're traumatized. If they don't get in contact with the VA, or something happens and they don't get in contact with the VA as much as they need to and get the help that they need, they're just on the street fucked up and nobody cares.
Right.
Sorry.
Oh, it's
But
okay.
it plays a really big role because now we're saying, oh, these gang members, we have turned these Black and Latino youth into the word gang members, into the
Mhm.
word like undesirable people, and now we want them all to go to prison. And it's like, no, they don't need to go to prison, they need mental help. Like,
Right.
there's a lot going on. So I think that's how it really plays into.
Wow, that's a great answer. And it really gets me thinking, like, you and I both know there's just a lack of resources for these
Yep.
kids, and especially in neighborhoods, um, where where there just is a lack of resources for everything. But how do you like, it might be like, I always try to think grand, like, how do you help these kids? And like, it's does it start at like the government level or the community level? What's your opinion?
I think it should start at a community level. Um, but it's just really hard. It's so interesting to me because I was a Girl Scouts troop leader for about a year. Um, Unqualified for the job, but they just threw me into it because I like to volunteer.
Mm.
But I was like really high up, like a troop leader. I led the entire troop. I knew everybody's address. I knew everything. I knew other troop leaders. I knew where all the troops were at. I knew wherever the meetings were. And when I went to do like just some research, see what was going on with the Girl Scouts. There are Girl Scouts like on the south side of Chicago that no one knows about. I've never seen them. I was never recruited for them. I've never seen them out and about selling cookies. And it's like there's these resources out there, but
Mm.
how are they not getting to these kids? And I think it definitely needs to start at a community level to where we need to expose these kids to these resources and stop asking them to apply for them. Stop asking their
Yeah.
parents, hey, sign them up for this, sign them up for that. No, why are you not out in the streets saying, hey, do you want to sign up for this? Do you want to sign up for that? Do you want to have this program? Do we want to get you in that program? But instead, we're worried about where everybody's zip code is, and we're worried about where who can go where, or how much money somebody can spend on it, and who's the alderman. Like, that's not my neighborhood, I'm not going to help them. It's like we have Boy Scouts, we have Girl Scouts. Yes, the Boy Scouts have had their their issues. I'm not saying go be a Boy Scout or condone anything that they're doing, but I'm saying we have these programs, but they're not being promoted to these youth. And so I think we need to work at a community level to actually promote these services to these youth, instead of expecting them to, get up and come and apply on their own, or having their parents do it either.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's like infuriating when I see like not enough money being like dedicated to mental health. Uh, because it's it's like I said, I feel like it's a public health concern, and it's just not being addressed. Even though you hear it from like Black and Latino people, just and just minorities in general, just literally begging like for money to help our community. Um,
Yeah.
because they don't have that money or education on where they can go or how they can get help, and it's only getting worse. And you see, even through like, not to get into like police stuff and like the whole reform,
Mhm.
but we really they really needs to be like qualified people. I think that's the thing. It's like, do you would you agree, like how to handle um minorities? Because like when I see someone that doesn't look like myself talking to, that doesn't know the same kind of problems that we
Mhm.
face, it's just like, well, what do you know? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a
Yeah,
lot of people have that
exactly.
kind of mentality.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we do need more people that are qualified. It's just like the way I see it is that it's going to take a minute. When
Mm.
I first started college, I was told that less than, this is so heartbreaking, less than 1%. That's literally zero. Like, I think we all understand less than one is zero.
Yeah.
So, less than 1% of Latinos get a doctorate degree. And this was back when I was in college about 10 years ago. And now I think it's like less than 3% or something like that. So we're getting up there. It's
Hmm.
just going to take a while for us to make an impact on the, in these professional fields and whatnot that we need to. But I think sorry, I lost my train of thought, but
No, yeah, it's gonna take a while for it's not gonna be an overnight thing.
yeah.
And I think the best thing we could do is just, personally, I think, be there for our friends and families, and if we see anyone that we think might be going through it, just kind of, be subtle, remind them that if they need anything, you're there for them, right? That's what I try to do, at least.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt in being a kind person. Like, I think a lot of times people are always wondering, like, well, what am I going to get out of it? And it's like,
That's
you
true.
might get something out of it, but at the end of the day, like, if your intention is to help, and either they did or didn't receive that help, your intention didn't change.
Hmm.
So there's no like harm in being a nice person.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things?
I think so. Try to keep people around me that are, you know, um, really well knowledgeable in like the mental health field, but also just I would say keep an open mind, because I'm gonna be real with you. I'm not about to go read no articles. I'm not about to go
Hmm.
take no classes and relearn all the stuff I learned. But I keep an open mind that if something's changed and somebody tells me something like, "Hey, that's not how that works anymore," I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, let me know how it works." Have them educate me, and you know, um, then go do my own research. But in the meantime, I just listen. And if somebody
Yeah.
has something different to say, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna listen.
Yeah, I mean, listening is powerful. That's how I learn, is a lot. I learn a lot from people. Just in So I love to do these interviews as well. I've learned a lot from you. I learned a lot from just interacting with people. I feel like that's one of the
Yeah,
best things to do.
yeah, definitely. No, it's that's one thing I love about Clubhouse, is because I've learned so much information on there that I've never found on Google. Like,
Mm.
it's so interesting just actually speaking to people than being told, hey, go look that up. I'm not going to tell you. It's like, no, we're here to share knowledge. Like, I'd rather hear it from you than hear it from a book. Like, we need to stop giving validation to these sources and whatnot that these other people have made that have nothing to do with us.
Right, yeah. And what were like the best of resources that helped you along the way? Like when you were going through it, like in the beginning of the pandemic, and I'm sure as many as well were, but um, what were some of the things that like helped you along the way?
I think one of the things that really helped me, because when I needed a psychiatrist, my favorite website to go to is Psychology Today.
Okay.
And even if you don't use the psychiatrist there, read their bios. because they give out bios, and they'll say, I'm this type of person, and this is the type of therapy I believe in, and this is what I do. And that way you can figure out what type of therapy would match up with you, because I was looking for people that it's really hard to find that specialize in ADHD and traumatic brain injuries. Like, I need a combination. Like, so that resource like really, really helped me. And I'm trying to, I feel like I feel like we get like paid. It seems like we get paid to promote Clubhouse, but like Clubhouse has been like, oh, before as it was, it didn't come out until after the pandemic, but
Mhm.
I think it's been a really helpful thing, because if you need someone to talk to, I'm not saying don't go to a licensed professional, but you don't always need a licensed professional. Sometimes you
Mhm.
just want someone to speak to. And a lot of times the people on there, they have so many really great resources. And honestly, that's where, the catalyst of like me getting my, life together started, when I started using Clubhouse and talking to people about the problems I had. And so the last resource I would say is to just literally speak to everyone you possibly can, and don't be ashamed.
Mm.
People laugh at you. Oh, well, they laughed at Jesus and look what they did to him. Like,
Right, right. That's and also just like if people don't have like um the money as well, I mean Clubhouse
yeah,
is free. Like,
yeah,
and then like I said, people are willing to share and talk there. And I think I found a lot of people with similar, like if you find the spaces with similar backgrounds and things that you might have you have in common, I think that's the greatest thing.
yep,
I
definitely.
I also wanted, you mentioned that you were working on a series called Realizations After a Concussion, right? You
Yeah.
speak more about it to me, because that sounds really interesting to me.
Yeah, so I'm not at home right now. I'm at a friend's house, but I had like some stuff written down about it. But so yeah, I'm starting this Clubhouse series called Realizations After After a Concussion. And it's just a lot of the stuff that I realized just after getting my concussion, about life, about just how to navigate through life, because I haven't really said this much, but I'm actually like disabled. Like, technically, I'm disabled, but the Social Security Administration doesn't believe that yet. Um,
Mm,
and just realizations of like, okay, just because I'm disabled does not mean I can't do this. So if that's the case, then what's stopping you? Like, and not even to compare, but saying like, okay, like if a disabled person can go and do whatever they want, and the things that they were stopping them was their vision and their dizziness and their memory, and if we break it down into just these are the things that's bothering me, how do we navigate that? um, People realize like, oh, life isn't that difficult. It's not that crazy. Once I realize that these are the things that are stopping me, this is what I need to do. Or it just the smallest things about life that people make really difficult. I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be that difficult. You don't have to have a difficult conversation. You don't have to. I realize a lot of people they won't give you an answer. They'll just tell you to go look it up. And I'll realize like, why can't we talk? Why can't we have a conversation? It's like, no, I don't want to talk to you. It's like, why not?
so you're gonna start this series in Clubhouse, and um, is this just gonna be? It's just gonna be a space for people to come in and just talk about their um, or is it just gonna be you most? It's kind of like a live podcast situation, and then people sharing.
It's more of like, I really want to talk about my experience. And then if anyone has, because what I realize is what my experience is relatable to a lot of people,
Mm,
regardless of if you're disabled or not. My problem is I can't keep a job. My problem is I can't pay my rent. Like, and so a lot of people are like, well, how do I how does that what does you having a concussion have to do with it? Like, people always say, this is it, sorry. I'm like, I have a headache. And anyway, so people say, they're like, well, you're so positive, and like, how are you so positive? People only do that when they're after they go through stuff. And I'm like,
mm.
wait, hold on, what do you mean after? Like, no, I'm currently going through this now. I have a headache like every day. I've been up since 3 a.m. actually. um
Wow. Well, thank you for taking the time to do this with me then.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, I just want to tell people like it's definitely can be done. Look at what I'm doing. It's never easy. Life is never going to get perfect. You're never going to be at a time in your life where you're like, everything's great. Like, no, that's not how it is. And so I just want to let people know, like, even through the storm, you can be okay.
I love that. And then I am for one looking forward to that. So keep me updated on that front. And
Yeah, definitely.
where can our listeners connect with you online if they're also interested in finding your information and just getting involved with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So I have a Instagram page at Jasmine Wintour, Jazmine Wintour. And I have Twitter as well, Jasmine Wintour. And Clubhouse, my name is Asurca Rodriguez.
Awesome. And I'll have that in the notes as well and on Instagram. So what's final takeaway here? What's something you'd like the listeners to take away from this episode, if anything?
Oh, I think the one thing I want people to take away is to remove the word try from your vocabulary and change it with do or manifest. Just do
Mm.
it or just manifest it. Just do not try. Just go and do it. Your dream life is literally right in front of you. You have to like go get it.
I love that. That is powerful. Um, manifesting. Do you obviously a believer in manifesting things? How do
Yeah.
you talk to me about that? I'm really interested in that because I hear it often.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm not one. It's so interesting because look, I went into my notes and I was like, I hope I can go find the note about manifesting because I wrote a whole little note about it. And guess what? It's already open. Okay.
There you go.
Um,
Wow.
I've manifested that.
Wow, you've
Anyway,
manifested that. I love it.
okay. So I'm not a big on words and like the definitions that people use, but manifesting apparently is something that has been really widely talked about. And I think the
Mhm.
only reason it's widely talked about is because the CIA, okay, has put out a paper talking about manifesting is real. Okay. And since then, people
Really?
have been saying, manifest this, manifest that. Yeah, it's like a 40-page document about a whole bunch of stuff that they thought was fake is actually real. Um,
Wow.
I think I have the link to it.
That's
Anyway,
interesting. I have to look into that later. That's cool.
yeah. And so after, I didn't read much of it. I was like, oh, the CIA said this, like, cool story. After I figured out what manifesting was, I was like, I've been doing this my entire life. No one's told me that this is like what it is. And just, I have 3 quick steps to manifesting. And what manifesting is just you um, asking for what you want and receiving it. So whether it be a new job, a new boyfriend, a new house, uh, I don't know if manifesting a new world is gonna work, but you can try. Um,
Could be like your
I would
perspective of the world, you know what I mean?
right,
Like
yeah,
your
like
own
that's the one
manifesting,
thing I.
yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's all I had to say. I was saying manifesting like you're shifting your perspective to what the world you want to be living in, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the crazy part is one thing about manifesting is if you don't believe it's possible, you cannot manifest it. That is bottom line. If you do not
Mm.
believe fundamentally that it's possible, it won't happen. And so the 3 steps that I came up with that I realized what I do is I, figure out what I want and communicate it clearly. So I either talk to somebody I think you need to talk to somebody about it, you need to write about it and to telepathically communicate and like just speak, like think about it or whatever. Um, and just make sure you're very specific about it. 2, you need to take the action needed. Literally just go do it. If you want a new house, go apply for a new house. You want a new job, go apply for a new job. Go look for the new job. Go make your resume, go apply for a loan. Literally go do all the things that involve you going to go get what you want. And then the 3rd step, I think this one is the one that trips people up, is to enjoy the process of
Mhm.
you going to go and get the things that you want, but you need to look for opportunities. for what you want. And what I realized a lot of times when I manifest, what I put my actual work in, like every job I've applied to, I never got. And every job I did get was a job that was sent to me. And so if I would just sit here and say, oh, if I would just sit here and say, oh, like I'm applying for these jobs. This is the job I want. This is a job I'm gonna apply for. And I don't care about any of these other jobs. If I don't look for this opportunity, then I'm not gonna see it. And so what I tell people, and I don't want to discourage them, but a lot of times what you put your hard work into is not going to be what you manifest.
Mm.
And that's the most difficult thing for people to understand. And they're like, well, I put a lot of work and hard work into this relationship with this guy and it's not working. Okay, that's just you showing that you have the effort, that you do want what you manifest, what you're asking for, but they're not going to give it to you in that person maybe. And so this is like, I've done this like my entire life with everything that I could possibly want, like from a job to the home I live in, and it explains everything. Because I was like, I just get everything right when I need it. Like,
Right. Right. That's see, I love manifestation because like it's speaking it into existence. It's kind of like it's also just motivation, you know. I'm all about motivation. And like it's just like, yeah, I'm gonna go after it, you know what I mean? Have the dedication. I want
it gives you
it.
more control over like what you do and want, and you realize like, wow, I really can go do whatever I want, and it's like so freeing. So
Right. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on here. I gotta say, your friends and family are absolutely lucky to have you in their lives because you just dropping dime after dimes here, and you're very knowledgeable and you give such great advice. So I'm so happy to have you on here and share that knowledge with our listeners as well.
yeah, no, thank you for having me. I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's anything that I didn't ask you or mention that you'd like to share as well, you can go ahead.
Um, no, not really. I think I'm all good. If anybody wants to uh check me out, I don't sell anything, so if you guys just want to chit chat, I'm definitely here. You got any problems you need help with? I can help as much as I can.
Well, let me tell you, you have great advice. You could start like blog posts and just monetize those as well. I mean, there's because I believe me, the things you're saying are amazing. So
Well,
def,
thank you. Yeah, no,
definitely stuff you
I'm
could do
really
with
trying to
that.
get into this. Thank you so much. I'm really trying to like get into this. So it really helps me like motivate me to do my clubhouse series. Because I'm like, I really want to help people, but I just feel like what I have to say is literally just stuff that I think about. So it's like, why do people want to hear this? And so you just really affirmed that for me. So thank you.
And you're here manifesting it. So
Yes.
all right. Thank you so much. That's